team coverage with ABC News White House correspondent Mary Alice Parks and national security and defense analyst Mick Mulroy. Mary Alice, what did you think were the big moments from this address? For sure, that last line, which I discussed with Cecilia, where he's saying, for God's sake, Vladimir Putin cannot stay in power. But where were some of the other key moments where you felt like Biden was really trying to get a message across?
Yeah, Dan, well, like you said, he was really trying to place this war in Ukraine as a part of a longer history and put him himself as a part of a longer history. He said that this is the newest battle for freedom, the latest battle for freedom in what has been generations, centuries of battles for freedom. And in that way, he said the world needs to steel itself, be ready and clear-eyed for the fact that it will not be over overnight, and in that we are in the long haul now for days and weeks to come in this longer, larger fight with liberty and freedom, he said, on one side versus autocracy and oppression on the other. I was also struck, like you said, when he took time to speak directly to the Russian people. He said that President Putin has denied them the facts and truth about this war. And he said the Russian people are not our enemy, that he cannot believe that Russians themselves would accept the horrors that are happening right now, that they would not accept the killing of grandparents, the targeting of hospitals or schools. He repeatedly called this Putin's war. And he had this moment where he spoke about his time today with refugees, where he talked about the compassion and that Poland had shown, that Poland had been opening its homes and hearts, but that the entire West had a responsibility, he said, to be opening homes, opening hearts to these millions of refugees that have crossed the border, seeking shelter, seeking peace.
And Mick, Russian troops appear to be shifting their strategy. Just yesterday, the Russian military said that they're now focused on the eastern Donbass province, kind of making it sound like that was the plan all along. We've also heard that Russian troops around Kyiv have adopted a defensive stance, and yet we're also hearing about these explosions on the outskirts of Lviv. So what do you make of that?
So, Diane, I think it's an acknowledgement, quite frankly, that their stated objectives, their objectives from the very beginning, are not going to be met, and they're trying to fall back on one that they believe is plausible. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it's certainly an indication that the Ukrainian resistance has really shown the tenacity that they did not expect. Not only have they stopped them, but they've pushed them back, and in some cases are actually on the offensive and enveloping Russian forces. So I don't think it's over. I do believe that we'll see more forces come from Belarus, from Georgia and other areas of Russia. So like the president says, this is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. We have to have the endurance. But certainly the Russians are surprised by both their lack of competence, I think, but also the tenacity of the Ukrainian will to fight.
And Mick, I want to point you to a moment in this speech where the president is talking about Vladimir Putin and all of the warnings given by the United States before this invasion started, and all the guarantees from Vladimir Putin that it wasn't going to happen. Let's listen.
I met with him in person, talked to him many times on the phone. Time and again, we offered real diplomacy and concrete proposals to strengthen European security, enhance transparency, build confidence on all sides. But Putin and Russia met each of the proposals with disinterest in any negotiation, with lies and ultimatums. Russia was bent on violence from the start. I know not all of you believed me and us when we kept saying they are going to cross the border, they are going to attack. Repeatedly, he asserted we had no interest in war, guaranteed he would not move. Repeatedly saying he would not invade Ukraine. Repeatedly saying Russian troops along the border were there for training, all 180,000 of them. There's simply no justification or provocation for Russia's choice of war.
Mick, why do you think it was so important to the president to highlight that? Is just an I told you so, or is there more to this?
So, Dan, I think it not only shows that Russia used diplomacy as a ruse to build up and prepare for this invasion, but it's going to make it very complicated to come to some kind of diplomatic end to this because, quite frankly, they can't be trusted. We've gone away from the trust, but verify, and now it's just verify. I would also point out another thing that the president said specifically about NATO being ready to defend itself. There's going to be a lot of talk about the concept of escalate to de-escalate in the Russian doctrine. And what most analysts are talking about is in the Russian doctrine, they believe attacking NATO first and strongly could potentially stop us from joining a conflict. I think the president made it very clear that that's not the case. You attack any part of NATO, you're at war with NATO.
And Mary Alice, this was just the last stop on a very long European trip. And even just there in Poland, we know the president met with refugees, as you mentioned. He also met with the president of Poland. How did that meeting go? What's the White House saying about that?
Yeah, well, I think the message from that meeting was exactly what we were just talking about. The president wanted to make it very clear that President Putin got exactly what he didn't want. He didn't want NATO on Russia's doorstep, and instead, the result of this war, the result of this invasion, he says, is that NATO has never been more unified. He wanted to have this incredibly strong show of support, him standing there with the Polish president, him meeting today behind closed doors with Ukrainian officials as well. He wanted to show Putin back that NATO was ready to defend itself and that the United States literally was going to stand shoulder to shoulder with European NATO allies.
And Mick, he said today directly to the Ukrainian people, we are with you, period. And we know the NATO and G7 summits in Brussels earlier on this trip were focused on military readiness. So what do you make of the response so far? You know, they haven't given Vladimir Zelensky everything that he's been asking for, no planes, no tanks. So what do you think? Has the U.S., have NATO, have they done enough so far to support Ukraine in this?
So I wouldn't say we've done enough. I would say we have done the right thing and that we can do more and we should do more. And I think, quite frankly, NATO understands that to be the case. We need to, if we're not going to provide a no-fly zone, and I certainly understand and agree with the reasons why we wouldn't, we need to help Ukraine provide their own no-fly zone. So we're talking S-300s, potentially S-400s, or any other anti-air and missile defense system that we can get in there. We need to provide all the weapons that they're using to great effect right now and double it. Right? We have a situation where we have real fighters on the ground that are causing major casualties and major degradation of the Russian army. We need to double down on our efforts because they're worth doubling down on. These Ukrainians are fighting, and we need to acknowledge that and make sure they get all the support they can from NATO.
And, of course, the other big weapon so far wielded in this war is economic sanctions. And there was a section of this speech where President Biden spoke about the economy in Russia and the repercussions so far. Let's listen to that.
As a result of these unprecedented sanctions, the ruble almost is immediately reduced to rubble. The Russian economy, that's true, by the way, takes about 200 rubles equal $1. The economy is on track to be cut in half in the coming years. It was ranked, Russia's economy was ranked the 11th biggest economy in the world before this invasion. It will soon not even rank among the top 20 in the world. Taken together, these economic sanctions are a new kind of economic statecraft with the power to inflict damage that rivals military might. These international sanctions are sapping Russian strength, its ability to replenish its military, and its ability to project power. And it is Putin, it is Vladimir Putin who is to blame.
And Mary Alice, one of the big efforts to step up those economic sanctions, something the president mentioned in this speech, is that agreement now between the U.S. and the EU to try to lower the EU's dependence on foreign oil. So what else is left in this? What other sanctions, what else is left in the toolbox to try to get at Russia from an economic standpoint?
Yeah, that's a key question, Diane, and the White House is normally pretty cagey when we try to pin them down on that. But you heard that moment where he said that it would be important for Europe to reduce its dependency on Russian oil, and that drew a large sort of applause in the audience. People there know that that would be the real way to hurt Russia's economy. And when you listen to the president there, you really get that sense that he views this as a longer-term battle, a generational fight, not something that he's seeing in the days and sort of individual moments of this war. war in Ukraine. The Ukrainians are clearly feeling this moment by moment, but he is talking about sort of the state of Russia's economy, and that at least in the long term, he feels like the West will have successfully denigrated the Russian economy, and that will matter in the days and weeks and years and generations to come. But you're exactly right. What other sanctions could they go after? We've heard them talk about things like even more oligarchs, even more Russian banks, but we will have to keep pressing. Diane.
All right, Mary Ellis Parks, Mick Mulroy, thank you both.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.